Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 922. I had the white pieces and started off with d4. My opponent went d5 and I played c4, the Queen's Gambit. So his reply was c5. That's known as the Austrian attack, and you can see it's like the sixth choice here in the opening database. It's not that great, but it is playable. It's kind of interesting. If you play knight f3, then he can play with e6, and this is like the semi-Tarrasch, although usually I have the knight here when I play against the semi-Tarrasch, but I think it's the same thing. And or he could take, and this is an interesting line. D takes, let's see, it starts with D takes c4, taking the undefended c-pawn. You can play e3. He can take here, and I was kind of wondering which way to take back, but this is the way to take. You take here, and it's a clever move here that there's actually a pin on this pawn here. You may not see it right away, but see if you can figure out why it's not safe for for black to continue taking there. Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. If black takes here, the queens are opposing each other, and the king has a limited number of squares it can go to. So bishop takes f7 check just wins the queen, because the king is the only piece defending the queen there. So what that means is that after bishop takes, black can't keep taking here. He's got to move the queen to the side. So queen c7, then queen b3, setting up for an attack like this. e6 to defend, and then finally pawn takes. So that kind of answered my question. I was wondering whether to take back here with the knight or the pawn, but pawn takes is the main move. And this looks like a very good isolated queen's pawn position for white. White's got good development and castling quickly, and black is falling behind here. So that looks like a nice position for white. Although the chess engine thinks that black can hold that, I would be happy to have white in that position. Anyway, that's just a different way of playing it. The going back to where we were, he played c5. Back. Yeah, he just played c5. And I went with this other line, c takes d5. This also gives an advantage to white. He played queen takes d5. It's not... I don't know why the opening book has a question mark there. Actually, queen takes d5 and knight f6 were rated about the same in the chess engine, and also in terms of winning percentage, they're about the same. So white does well on all these lines. So queen takes d5. The thing is, you get a tempo here against the queen. Oh, not right away. Let's see. First you play knight f3 to defend that pawn, and then he can take. So this is actually where we got out of book. He played bishop g4, and we're out of the opening book. But I think I mentioned this in the game. This is the line. White and black can take, but you can play knight c3 here, kicking the queen, because if he takes, the queen is hanging. So that's an important finesse here. You gain a tempo on the queen. The queen can run over here, looks like, for a moment. He's pinning your knight and causing some problems, but then you can just take this pawn, and, well, he can continue developing with knight f6. But it's a position where white is just a little bit better than black, just better developed. So that's all fine ways to play. In the game, let's see, after knight f3, I went knight f3 here, just defending my pawn and preparing to play knight c3, and he played bishop g4, and we're just out of the opening book there. And the chess engine is giving white pretty much a winning edge here. Let's see, I played knight c3, which is good. He went queen h5, and then I played d takes c5, which keeps a winning edge, actually. But even stronger is the immediate knight b5, because, well, this is kind of a hard threat to meet. It's not only a fork, also the knight, the rook in the corner has no moves, so probably the best try is knight to a6. But you can see these threats are going to cause black to get his pieces out of joint. So queen a4, setting up a discovered attack on the king. Bishop d7 coming back. Knight e5. Now there's a threat to take here, and there's still this check here. Yeah, I guess the threat is the check because the queen and the knight will coordinate on the bishop. So queen f5 to defend the bishop, and then just e3. And the chess engine wants to just keep playing like this with black's pieces all kind of tied up. Of course, black can take here, just trade the bishop for the knight, but then this will go with check, and the b pawn is hanging. So it's a bad position for black, and knight b5 is the strongest move there. I took a pawn here, which and he took it back. This keeps an advantage because he's still way behind in development, and I get e4 in, so I get a pawn in the center first. He goes knight to c6. I go bishop e3, hitting his queen. Queen goes back to h5, and I went bishop e2. And another case here where bishop to e2 is an okay move, and it keeps an advantage, but even stronger was queen to b3. Looking at this pawn and unpinning the knight. You know, it's a little bit awkward to have this knight pinned, and he's threatening to take here, and if I'm not defending it, he'll mess up my pawns over on the king side, which I don't really want. But queen b3 gets out of that problem right away. If he takes, then queen takes b7 is forking these two pieces. Neither the knight nor the rook is defended, so he can't play a move like rook to b8. You just take the knight. So that is just good for white. So he can't, after queen b3, can't play bishop takes f3. And if he castles queenside here, you can continue with the bishop to b5. Oh, it's the other bishop. Bishop to b5. So that, well, once again, if he takes, he gets into trouble. You can take here, and you've got a mate threat there, so he's got to deal with that. And then you can play queen to a4 and just kind of leave things hanging over here. But you've got big threats against the king, the exposed king over on the queen side. So anyway, that is all winning for white as well. So bishop e2 is not the best move there, but still keeping an edge. So I'm still winning at this point. And we'll find the point later where I give up the advantage. But it takes a couple of moves. So knight f6, I castle. e6, all this looks pretty normal. h3. Yeah, the chess engine did not like h3. I think that's okay, but after h3, my edge has diminished to just a slight advantage. So I'm a little bit better, but not much. Once again, knight b5 could have been played. That's an interesting move there, and probably best. After h3, he kicks, he takes, I take back. I thought, it'd be good to get a tempo on the queen. His best reply here, by the way, is queen over to a5. And then he gets out of trouble. But I guess he wanted to keep the queen over here on the king side. So anyway, I do keep some edge through this part as well. So queen b3, I finally hit on this idea. Looking at the b pawn, he played rook b8 to defend. I bring my rook out. This is good. He played bishop to e7, and I went rook to c1. So rook to c1 is not best once again. There's a clever idea here with e5. So if he takes the pawn, then you have the check here. And, well, he can defend against it, kind of. So he can block with one of the knights. I guess it doesn't matter which one, because you're going to be taking them. You take here, and he takes back. And then you can bring another rook in to attack the pinned knight. And the chess engine was saying, actually, a best move here is castling, and then you'll take there and have two pieces. You'll be up. What will that be? Yeah, you'll have two pieces for the rook. Right now, white is actually down the exchange, and black can continue to defend with rook to d8, but then these pawns start to fall on the queen side there, and also once you take the b pawn, the bishop can come back and apply more pressure along this diagonal. So it seems like black is in some pins that he can't easily get out of in this case. So that's also a good position. But also rook a to c1. This is now it's starting to go downhill a little bit. He castles, and I play knight a4. And knight a4 is just a blunder. I left this pawn hanging. It's actually technically not a blunder. The chess engine did not complain so much about that knight a4 move because I have some compensation if he were to just grab the pawn right away. Knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, queen takes, and knight to c5. You know, it's a good square on c5 that I get from my pieces. And say rook f to c8, yeah, that was recommended, and then kicking the queen like this, and while I'm guarding the diagonal, it actually still gives an advantage to white here, or at least enough compensation for the pawn. So knight a4, although it's a blunder because I didn't notice the pawn was hanging. That's why it's a blunder. But technically speaking, it's still okay here. And he didn't grab the pawn right away. He played knight e5, which turns out that's an okay move too. And then bishop to c5, and it's after this bishop c5 move that black is better. So probably let's back up here. Probably instead of bishop to c5, I should have played bishop to e2 here, and let him take that pawn, and then just grab over here, and that's a way to stay in the game. After bishop to c5, he plays this part pretty well. He trades, and then plays b6 to kick my knight, so I'm no longer defending the pawn. And my knight went over to a6. I was trying to find a way to hold on to that e-pawn, but I kind of get myself into trouble. Let's say I trade here and play this move, rook to e1, and now he takes. I take with the queen, and he gets his rook into c2. So it's looking pretty good for black at this point. And I don't have a good way of going down in material. Let's see, I played e5 here. He went knight to d5, and I played rook to e2. So right here, actually, because he played knight to d5 there, I could have played this move knight b4. I think I noticed this a move later, but it could be played right here. It looks like a fork, right? I'm hitting the rook, I'm hitting the knight. If knight takes knight, then I have the checkmate. So that's the idea there. But he can play rook d2, defending the knight, and this position seems to be about even. Anyway, I went with rook e2. He could just trade, but he dropped his rook back to c4. Let's see, I went a3 here. He went queen b1 check, driving my king here, and brought his rook in. Let's see, and I did finally play knight to b4, getting my knight into the game. That was actually the idea of this a3 move, was to support the knight on b4 when his rook was here, because otherwise he had rook takes. But his rook is not there anymore. But anyway, and I'm still taking advantage of this checkmate on the back rank, so he can't take my knight. But he can harass my king here, queen g6, and get into a better endgame. So this is where, I don't know if black ever had a winning advantage, but he definitely had the edge through this part of the game. And, you know, these are probably good moves, just messing up my pawn structure and going for this endgame. Now he went rook d1 here. I went rook to c2, putting my rook on the open file and threatening checkmate. And he needed to play g5. I was thinking he'd play h3, but Chess Engine likes g5 here. And it gives black a +1 advantage, or -1 actually, but a 1 point advantage, which is not to say black is going to win, but he does definitely have winning chances. It's not a book draw or anything. There's a lot of pawns. There's pawns on both sides of the board, so so black has all the winning chances here. But instead, he played rook to d7, and the game came to a quick halt. Anyway, it was a funny end. Let's see, did he even play rook d8? Yeah, maybe he did. And I have that in the notation here. But of course, that's mate in one there, so he resigned before I could finish the game by taking the rook. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe that move was a typo, a misclick. He could have intended to bring the rook back here. That's would save the game, but actually that would give me better chances in the endgame, because I could start going after his pawns and stuff like that. So having touched the rook, though, his best bet would have been to take it back to d8. Anyway, this is the final position here. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye.